Welcome back to Rarest Photos. Hope you had a wonderful week. I am getting back into the swing of doing some reading. We have some more June and Elvis, the Twilight of Memory, that y'all asked me to buy, and I did. June is one of my favorite people that were associated with Elvis back in the early days. We know he dated Dixie Locke, Barbara Hearn. In fact, he was dating Dixie and Barbara at the same time. Now, before some of y'all kind of jump on that phrase, I mean, a lot of people say that all Elvis did was hold hands, make out, which, the 50s, people certainly had full-on relationships, but I think that Elvis, for the most part, according to a lot of the people that he was with, including June, Elvis would ask them, and if they weren't comfortable with it, then they didn't go any further than they went. I think there was a phrase of "Are you a good girl?" So it's very interesting when you're talking about that kind of stuff because it's easy to jump on it and judge. But I think that Elvis was very concerned. First off, consent, right? That would be the, I guess, the new age word on it. If they didn't want to go any further, do anything else, then they didn't, which I think is commendable, right? Yeah, you would think. So let us continue reading. All right. And of course, we've read Are You Lonesome Tonight, and we're continuing to read that as well. And, Are You Lonesome Tonight? I mean, I think that, first off, she had relations. Now, they weren't friendly relations, but she had relations. And I think that in the case of people that want to judge Lucy, I think that she was, in a sense, craving a positive experience. And she felt that Elvis was going to give her a positive experience, which he did, according to the book. And the history of her history, right? You got to choose to believe somebody or not believe somebody. I mean, I choose to believe June. I mean, I'm sorry, to choose to believe Lucy, and I believe June as well. I don't think that Elvis and June went all the way. So this next chapter is chapter 7, and it's called Are You Lonesome Tonight, which is interesting because that's where we left off. And, it made me think this book was written 10 years after. So to name a chapter, Are You Lonesome Tonight, when their time together was 1956, basically. Maybe some of 55, right? Maybe even some of 54. At least knowing each other, seeing each other. So, all right, Are You Lonesome Tonight? Elvis phoned the room early the next morning, and again, I caught it on the first ring. I have some business to take care of this morning, so I'll pick you up at 2 o'clock. I don't know what we'll do today, but I'll think of something. Will you be there at 2? I'll be right here, I said excitedly. The girls and I drove downtown to get a bite to eat and pick up a few more souvenirs. So to close that thought about Are You Lonesome Tonight, Are You Lonesome Tonight didn't come out until after 1960. So to put this as a name in the book makes me wonder whether the publisher wanted to tie in the Lucy DeBarban Are You Lonesome Tonight book with Daria Matera into a chapter here. That's just a small little thought. Maybe we'll figure something out. Maybe maybe Elvis will talk to June about recording Are You Lonesome Tonight, an old standard. I don't know. We'll find out. So the girls and I drove downtown to get a bite to eat and pick up a few more souvenirs. I was checking my watch every 15 minutes. I didn't want to miss him. I felt like a traitor, going off and leaving the girls every day. But I kept telling myself that they'd do the same thing, given the opportunity. It was almost 2 o'clock when we got back to the motel. Elvis was waiting for me in the courtyard. He said he'd been there for less than a minute. So we stayed at the hotel long enough for Elvis to take a few snapshots with the girls. When we got in the car, we hugged and kissed like we hadn't seen each other in ages. It was a good feeling having him as excited to see me as I was to see him. Will it be okay, baby, if we just hang around the house again today? I'm still expecting that important phone call. His tone was somewhat apologetic. I don't care what we do, Elvis, as long as I'm with you. When we pulled into the driveway, Mr. Presley was sitting in the car, waiting to take Mrs. Presley grocery shopping. They were babysitting the telephone until Elvis got home. I felt a little strange being in the house alone with Elvis, even though Mrs. Presley had said they'd be right back. Elvis put some soft music on the hi-fi and took some throw pillows from the couch and placed them in the floor in front of the speaker. Now, compared to his hyperactivity yesterday, he now seemed to be moving in slow motion. It was a pleasant change of pace. He laid his head in my lap, closed his eyes, and enjoyed having my fingers running through his hair. We were still in the same position when the Presleys returned. Now, Mrs. Presley smiled when she came in and saw Elvis's head in my lap. You better watch it, June. He'll stay there forever if you play with his hair. I hated to disturb him, but my rear end was going to sleep. I was glad that when Mrs. Presley brought in 2 bowls of ice cream, at least I could get up and stretch. As soon as we finished the ice cream, Mr. Presley came in. Telephone for you, son. Elvis jumped up and ran to his bedroom. He was gone about 5 minutes and came back smiling. Come with me, June. He pulled me to my feet and hugged me tight. Baby, you got to go with me. Okay, let's go. Where to? To pick up my new car. He lifted my feet off the floor and spun me around and around. Then he put me down and put both hands on my shoulders. Now let me see. This is what we got to do. You go call a motel and see if Maria's there. Ask her if she'll pack a few things for you and bring them over here. Pack a few things? Why? Where are we going? We're flying to Houston, Texas. We'll be staying overnight. Go ahead, baby. Call them. Ask them to come over and visit for a while. Hurry. I have to use the phone. I got to call the airport and make reservations. Then I have to call and find a hotel near the Cadillac company. The girls won't like this, Elvis. Sure they will, June. They had a good time over here. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about me going out of town with you. They're not going to say anything, June. Go call them. There's something you don't understand, Elvis. The only reason I'm here is because Marie wanted to take her vacation in Memphis. I didn't realize until after we were here that the only reason we came to Memphis was to see you. June, if I was you, I wouldn't worry about it. When I was in Biloxi doing a show, I was asking around whether anyone knew June Wanico, and Marie told me she was your best friend. I asked her if she would go out after the show, and she and some of her friends went with us to a nightclub. Now, Marie's a nice girl, June. She won't be mad with you. If she gets mad with anyone, it'll be me. Anyone, she's the one who told me that you were engaged. She did? Yeah, that's why I was so surprised to see you. What's with this guy she told me about? What guy? I'm seeing several guys. So, once again, I wasn't around in the 50s. Maybe some of y'all were. 50s, early 60s. What's with everybody dating a bunch of people? Nowadays, if you're dating a bunch of people, if you're a guy, you're a player. And if you're a girl, you're loose, or you're, the other terms that they call girls. Under the assumption you're doing something with every one of them, I guess. But back in the day, you see Elvis dating a bunch of girls. A lot of them. More than June. But then June said, I'm seeing a bunch of them. I'm seeing several guys. She's going out with several guys. At the same time. Was it like that? And obviously, if you're going on a date with John one night and Louis the next night and Philip the next night, you're probably trying to find the right one, right? But she said, I'm not engaged. I'm not even going steady. He took my face in his hands and looked in my eyes. No one special in your life? Yes, my mother is the one special person in my life. No special guys? He asked. Only you, I answered, smiling. He smiled back and kissed me gently on the lips. I'll go make that call, June. Well, I called the room and Marie answered the phone. I told her that I was going out of town with Elvis and asked her if she'd pack a few things for me and come over to his house. Now, she asked what I was going to do about Edville, the guy I'd been dating most back in Biloxi. Okay, so Interesting. So there is a guy that she's been dating most, an Edval. 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 Elvis and Edville. She obviously picked Elvis to date more. But assumptions. I bet you Marie assumed that she's seeing this one guy and she's serious about him or likes him a lot. Because, girls talk to each other, I'm sure. Guys do too, but they don't talk about, I've never been one to kiss or tell in that department. But if I liked a girl a lot, I would tell somebody, hey, I really like this girl. I think she could be the one, or she is the one, whatever. But obviously, so she's answering. She's in her book, she's trying to straighten the story out. So what I was going to do about Edville, the guy I'd been dating most back in Biloxi. What about Edville? I'm not engaged to Edville. We're not even going steady, Marie. I know, June, but if he finds out about this, it'll break his heart. Marie, I'm not about to go home and rub it in his face. If you don't want to come over here, I'll get Elvis to take me to my clothes. No, it's okay. I'll pack a few things for you, and we'll be there in a little while. I just want to make sure that you know what you're doing. I'm not doing anything wrong, Marie, I promise. Thanks, Marie, and don't forget my PJs. Now, Marie was the oldest in the group, and for some reason, I thought I should have her permission. Well, I hung up the phone, knowing Marie wasn't too crazy about the idea of me going out of town with Elvis. But I told myself that I was a big girl and didn't have to answer to anyone but my mother. Now, when the girls arrived about 30 minutes later, Elvis and I both answered the door. I took the overnight case from Marie, thanked her, and put it in the foyer. We all followed Elvis to the den, where he was the perfect host, making sure his attention was spread equally. Now, I felt like the girls were being a little cool to me, but I wasn't going to let it bother me. I didn't plan to take Elvis away from anyone. He was the one that chose me. I didn't plan. Oh, yeah, sorry. And I was having the time of my life, said June. I hadn't even wanted to come to Memphis in the first place. Well, they all played King of the Mountain on a big round ottoman in the middle of the floor. Before I read further, what the heck is King of the Mountain? Do y'all know that? Did you play King of the Mountain? I got to guess. What would King of the Mountain be on an ottoman? Maybe the person that could stay on the ottoman without getting knocked off? Could you or maybe they tried to stack high, and then if you made it to the top, then you were the king? Let's find out. I'm just curious if y'all know what that game is or played it before I read it further. Timestamps around 1250, 1252. You can leave your comment with the timestamp. There's like a little thing you can click while you're leaving a comment that will show what time you said the comment. So 13 minutes. We're going to read now. I'll give about 10 seconds, 15 seconds for y'all to. All right, here we go. They all played King of the Mountain on a big round ottoman in the middle of the floor. I didn't want to get my hair mussed, so I just watched. With the girls double teaming Elvis, he didn't stand a chance. They laughed as hard as they played until Elvis had to go get cleaned up for the trip. We had to be at the airport in an hour. Well, I still looked good. I'd made sure of that before I left the motel. I guess King of the Mountain must be fighting on an ottoman. Whoever was the last on the ottoman was the king. It didn't explain it. Sorry. I thought it was going to explain it. So Elvis came back to the den smelling great. What cologne did Elvis use? I think it was Brute, wasn't it? Or was it Stetson? Y'all know this? But obviously, if you do, put it in the comments. For the rest of us, we're just going to wonder what he smelled great. He smelled great wearing something. Looking his usual gorgeous self, and said it was time for us to leave. Now, the girls got up off the floor, said their goodbyes to me, kissed Elvis, and left. We were still standing at the front door, waving to the girls, when Mrs. Presley walked up behind us and put her arms around us both. You two have a good time. Be careful, and call me as soon as you land. Elvis, you be sure and mind your manners. She kissed Elvis in the cheek, took me by the hand, and led me to the living room. Now, I looked around, and Elvis was nowhere in sight. June, I need to talk to you for a minute. How old are you? I'm 18, Mrs. Presley. Are you sure, June? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I'm sure. Actually, I'm 18 and a half. I just wanted to be sure. You know, Elvis could get in lots of trouble if he was underage because he's taking you across the state line. I promise you, Mrs. Presley, Elvis could take me anywhere in the world and he'd never get in any trouble. And about Elvis's manners, Mrs. Presley, I wouldn't worry one bit. Elvis took me around town the other day and introduced me to all of his friends. What impressed me the most about him was his impeccable manners. You've done a great job, Mrs. Presley. Well, thank you, June. I tried to do right. You did right, Mrs. Presley. Believe me. My mother always said you can tell how a person was raised by his manners, and that good manners are a gift of love from your parents. Now, she lightly brushed my face with the back of her fingers, the same way she did with Elvis, and she called him her satin. Sorry. I thought there was another book I was going to reference back there. So she called him her satin. I guess I'll have to call you my little satin, because your face is soft and smooth like satin too. There we go. There's the reason why Gladys called Elvis satin, because it was like satin. Huh. Smooth and soft like satin too. Thank you, Mrs. Presley. It's the truth, June. You're very special to Elvis. I know. Not only because he told me so, I could tell by the way he looks at you. Elvis is very special to me too, Mrs. Presley. I know too, June. I know that. Well, now you two go along and have a good time. Make sure he calls me as soon as he lands. Not to worry, Mrs. Presley. I'll make sure he calls. Elvis was just hanging up the phone when we went back to the den. I know Elvis will take good care of you, June, and I want you to take good care of him. All right, so this is something that this is not a criticism on June, because I like June, and I think she, like Peter Guralnick said, she's a great author. She's a great writer. Nobody questions June. Every one of these conversations, and there is a lot of conversations. It's full of, this whole book is full of quoted Elvis. Nobody questions that. But everybody questions how Lucy the Barman, here's the book, how Lucy, I don't know where I put the Are You Lonesome Tonight book, somewhere, how Lucy could remember conversations. And this, sorry, I've got indigestion or something going on. This book was written in 1997. 10 years later, so 10 years further removed from this 1956 conversation. Nobody questions it. You don't hear any criticisms about it. But everybody questions how Lucy could remember the conversations that she had with Elvis, which are fewer in her book by far than June has. June has everything from Gladys to Vernon to Elvis to Marie. Nobody questions it. So I just want to be fair here when we're talking about here's a question. Do y'all believe this is exactly what Elvis said in these books? In this book? And exactly what June said and exactly what Gladys said? Or do you think it was to the best of my remembrance, this is something of kind of what he said, kind of what she said? Would it make a difference? And then take the Are You Lonesome Tonight book, which was written 10 years prior to this. So 10 years closer to the conversations happening in 53, in 56, in 57, in 67, in 69, in 70, 73, 75, 77, those time frames, you know. Obviously, there's a better chance that those are actually exactly what Elvis said or very close. Not putting June down in any way. But I think it's very, you know how people can be unfair to one over the other? I don't know. Just makes me think. Makes me think about it. anyhow, that's where we're going to leave the book off there. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm going to try to get a few other books read today. And I also need to go back over the Elvis and the Legends and read some more of the Anne Margaret story. Anyhow, TCB TLC, this is Rare Elvis Photos. Thanks for joining me and reading some more of that Elvis in June book. And hopefully I can get back on track and doing 3 or 4 videos a day for y'all, like I did for quite a while. I would say 3 months straight, maybe. I guess I needed a little break. Just a little break from my voice, and I don't know. Sometimes I get so busy doing all these other things that I'm like, can I get down there? Can I do it? Is my voice okay? All that stuff. All right. Thanks so much. TCB TLC. Till next time.